Welcome to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld, and this program is about the ongoing evolution of who we are as a civilization, how we're changing, how we're becoming more aware of a greater reality. So I've been doing this program in order to investigate the new information, the new integration of knowledge systems into our culture. And I've tried to be at the forefront of these new systems. So that's one thing we'll be talking about tonight. And joining me on the show is my co-host Patricia Taylor, who's also very much involved in this idea of new realities. Just tell them a little bit your background on where you're coming from as far as like new ways of thinking.
Well, it's in all areas, really, isn't it, Alan? It's food, it's mind, body, spirit, soul.
Yeah.
So it's creating a new reality and a new vortex, a new channel to move forward into the new age. So.
Thank you.
Everything needs to be, I say, clean and impeccable for that to happen.
But that actually is a great introduction to the guest tonight, Bill Tara, who is really focusing on human ecology. I mean, he comes from a macrobiotic background. He's been a guest on this program before. But this understanding of how we are, as human beings, can live healthier in relationship to the earth. It's such a new idea, but it's so old. It seems so ridiculous that we don't know this after 10,000 years of civilization. And
even longer.
I mean, they did know it at one point.
Absolutely.
And then probably the last 200 years, they've forgotten this. But where are we now? I mean, how are you working with people to show the integration of the human and the ecology of the earth?
Well, a lot of the old systems that we may admire that come from more primitive cultures, for lack of a better word, really are about our relationship to the planet. They were about a particular kind of both physiological and psychological and spiritual relationship with the planet itself. And so people knew when the seasons changed. They knew what it meant when certain animals came or went, or moved in their migration. There was a kind of a language of nature that was incorporated to a lot of the mythologies and the stories and the folk medicine of people all over the world, from every culture, right?
Well, that's part of the problem. First of all, most people live in cities. We're disconnected from nature. People sit in a cubicle all day and they hardly even look outside. The only window on the world is their computer screen or their television screen. So there's a disconnect. And so in the industrialization of the world, we've lost touch. Is there a way to have these ancient ways part of the current?
Well, I think that obviously I think that there is, but I think that there are difficulties there, and but it's starting to come to the surface more because people are starting to connect the dots. When I first started becoming interested in natural foods was in the mid-1960s, and I was lucky enough to be involved in some of the first food companies that developed organic sourcing in America, and we were looking at it from a particular viewpoint that had to do with the relationship of health and soil, etc. Now that understanding is pretty widely spread, but we're starting to see that when we eat poor food, it also produces disease, right? And that when we have too much disease, it impacts our economy. We can't keep up with the sickness. And when we start importing foods all around the world and we eat poor food, it creates social injustice because we start using monocropping and we let agribusiness take over the land and small farmers are driven off. And so all of this, we start to see that this connectedness that primitive people talked about and knew about so intimately is not something that went away with the Industrial Revolution, right? We like to pride ourselves on being very hip technologically, but all it has done in many cases is bring us further and further away from the sensitivity that is unique in the human organism, and that is our capacity to really be reflective to the environment, to not only see what's there, but to project how it could be. How could it be different, right? And that's really the human gift, right? The human gift is not making machines, right? The human gift is the gift of imagination and being able to see common shared value and bringing that into consciousness, which the animal kingdom has. It's just not that it's not reflective, right? No, animals know how to live. If human beings left the earth, the rest of the world would get along dandy, right? Squirrels, chipmunks, elephants, and whales all would rejoice. Oh my God, they're gone. And there's no other creature that you can pull out of the system where that's true. Right? And so we have to learn how to be here. This is our unique challenge. Right? The challenge of consciousness is that we have to grow up. And when you grow up, you start taking care of the resources that you have. You start taking care of the home, which is what eco means. It's like the home. Right?
So how, okay, we're about to grow up, I think. Everyone has to eat. Even if you're locked in an office with fluorescent lights and 4 walls and a computer, you're going to have to feed your body.
Yeah.
But people do that so unconsciously, especially in those unconscious, disconnected environments. So how do we do what you're talking about?
Yeah, we need to show up, not just grow up.
Yeah,
right?
It's very true, and it is a process, and I'm, because of what I do and because of the length of time that I've been doing it, I'm not without compassion for a person who's saying, just go away. If I have a hard day and I go home and I down a pint of Haagen-Dazs, I feel good, right? And I want to sit there and watch people be humiliated on reality television, and just be out of it. And so it's part of regaining touch with reality again, and regaining touch with our biological reality is a huge piece of that. The increased interest in things like yoga and Tai Chi and all of these different physical forms, I think, has a lot to do with that. People want to experience their body in a way that they don't when they just sit in a chair all day. And I think the internal responsiveness of learning how to eat well, right? And eating lower down on the food chain, and getting rid of the junk out of the diet starts to create in people a particular kind of sensitivity. And that sensitivity draws you naturally into seeing the world differently.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, you've been in the beauty industry. Do you find that's true in these?
Oh yes, no, I do. I mean, I also find, is this true that some of these, even if it's macrobiotic, organic fruits and vegetables, need to be eaten at certain seasons?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, even going as far as the knowledge of the food, there's knowledge behind that.
Right.
When it's really beneficial for you and when it's not.
Well, the whole this Chinese medicine is built around that, and the Japanese version of it in macrobiotics is built around that. My friend Roger, who's in the studio today, he has a whole course that he runs here in New York, the Academy of Healing Nutrition, and people study that. It's like, that's the awareness that was there. But it's a little bit more difficult now than it was then, because now we can go to a store and we can get sun-dried tomatoes from a quaint village in Italy, and we think, oh, well, these are organic, but we're not looking at, hey, wait a minute, those had to be flown in by jet, right? And the olive bar, and all of that, and there's a transitional phase that we have to go through to get to simple and learning how to make food which is truly delicious, right? And appealing to the eye as well as the taste, and is serving our health, right?
Yeah, but okay, we're aware of organic, but like the guys in the office behind the computer, how do we reach that population, or the people in the industry you came from who are unconscious?
Well, where I came from, it's, beauty is, as long as you've masked it over with plastic surgery or, makeup, you're beautiful. And that they don't look at the inside out. They look at the spirit from the inside out. If you're happy, if you're confident, you're beautiful. But it never really goes as far as if you eat well, if you eat right, if you use your intuition of what your body needs to survive then that's beauty. That's never spoken, rarely spoken
Well,
about.
people have to be the messengers, and it's the people. You know, when you learn something like you have learned by observation and by experience, that when you keep yourself healthy and fit inside, you have a particular kind of glow, which we interpret as beauty, right?
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
when you see that, then other people see that too.
Yeah.
I had a funny thing happen to me when I first got involved in macrobiotics. I was living with a Japanese family, and I had to get a job at one point. I was desperate to get some finances, and so I got a job in a factory. Right, and the first day that I went to work in the factory, the wife presented me with a macrobiotic meal, but it was in a Japanese obento, which is a little ceramic box with a silk tie around it, and I had to take this to work to the factory, and I considered throwing it, you know, like dumping it, but I couldn't do that because it was offered in such grace, you know. So I took it, and when I went into the lunchroom and opened that thing up, I mean, and I was for lunch, right? So you know, and for weeks this went on because I thought, well, I've done it now, you know, so I'm going to do it, and I was eating food which was obviously quite different than what everybody else had in their black flip-top lunchbox.
This was in America somewhere.
This was in America, and this was in the 1960s, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But the interesting thing was that after people got through reacting and making fun and doing this and that and the other thing, people started coming to me and saying, you know, I got this problem, you know, I'm getting stiff in my arms, you know, if you eat that way, do you get, you know, and people started asking questions, and I think that one of the things that people don't like is they don't like to be preached to. But they do appreciate it when people stick to their guns, and I think if you stick to your guns and you do what you know is right, and you have a good sense of humor about it, that I think that inroads can be made. And when you back that up with more and more people starting to connect the dots between all this, see, this has to happen.
Of course it has to happen. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's either that happens, human ecology or earth ecology, or there is no ecology.
Yeah.
So what's the big picture? I mean, if it was up to you and you were running the planet, and how would these systems work? What would you have people do?
Well, first of all, when people woke up every morning, they'd have to bow down to a picture of me, right? That would be like, that would just be like the system. No,
that's power corrupts. You're just like everyone else.
No, you have to start with kids.
Yeah.
You have to start with kids. We have to start feeding our children the food that we know is food that prevents the kind of diseases that are bankrupting the country, right? You know, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, these are all preventable.
They are.
Why would we choose to have them? Because if something's preventable and you know what causes it and you go ahead and you do it, you are choosing to have it.
People don't know what causes it because they're unconscious, but why?
Decision makers know.
Then why are they doing that? Why are they choosing disease over health?
You know, there's this thing called money.
Convenience.
It gets into money gets in there first.
I wish I knew more about that.
So when you get into when you get into the money of it, the food industry is one of the most powerful industries in America, and they really are huge. Right? In every single state, there is animal farming, there's dairy farming, there's farming, there's the food industry is there, right? And the food industry does not want to go through the inconvenience of moving back down into less processed foods. The more that you add value, in other words, process of food, the more profit you make on it. Okay, so when we talk about food cafeterias being sponsored by companies like McDonald's or Coca-Cola or whatever, we're talking about something that is very, very criminal in a sense. You know, and so that's where you have to start.
Criminal because
we know very well what that food does.
They're killing people for money.
Yeah, and children.
And children is so do you have to become, in a way, the picture with the dictator? Because I mean, how else are you going to change big business, big money, big corporations for health? They obviously don't care about people.
Consumers buy products. And people have to be educated to the point where they start buying products that are smart, right? They have to start asking questions. They have to start saying, where did this come from, right? You know, where does that food come from? How is it farmed? You know, how is it processed? And people need to get off being lazy a little bit and start cooking at home, right? Yeah. Cooking is a very human art, you know, and it's one of the things that created civilization when people started getting control over their food and being able to select foods and combine foods in ways so that you really release the potential energy of the food. That's the gift of cooking. It's the alchemy of it, you know? Yeah. And so we need to learn that again, you know, and if you're not doing that, and if you're not feeding kids well, because kids will eat good food, right? I have 6 kids. They were raised without meat unless they chose to go out and eat it, which you know, you can't be everywhere. Even if people worship you in the morning, you can't be everywhere, right? No, so they didn't have that. They didn't have milk. Everybody kept saying, oh, your kids will be weak, you know. My kids are all athletic, right? You know.
But you know, Bill, I mean, I appreciate your years and years of work in the area, but
when you say it that way, I sound really old.
No, because since the 60s, you've been a very top macrobiotic counselor, and people know you around the world. And you're used to meeting people who are interested in healthy food. But you go to Mall Culture America, and they're stuffing their face with pizza and hot dogs and Coca-Cola, and you say, you know, hey guys, you can eat this healthy brown rice, or you can eat your pizza. It's like they say, go away, you know?
But you know, this is a very common argument, Ellen. But here's the problem with that. If you always look down there and you look at the negative, and down there, I don't mean in a derogatory sense, there are many people in the world right now who are looking for an answer, who want to find out how the heck do I get out of this rat race I'm in biologically. They want to, how do I get my cholesterol down? You know, how do I take control of my diabetes? How do I do this? And those people are the people who are going to start it. Right? You know, because there's already an interest there. You know, and the more people get interested and the more people speak up about not only their interest but also what they're doing. You know, I know that there's a lot of well-known people that eat the way that I eat and probably the way that you eat, and they don't say anything though, because they don't want to be a little eccentric. Right? You know, they don't want to be seen as being eccentric. Well, people better get off that horse. You know, you have to start speaking up for the things that you do, just sensibly. That's, you know, what you do. That's the way you live your life. And then people know, oh, well, that can't be bad. Now, I really admire the fact that Bill Clinton, you know, started talking about changing his diet. Of course, he had to, or people think he was dying. He lost so much weight, you know, like, you know. But he said, you know, hey, look, I'm doing this, and I'm healthy. And a lot of people respect Bill Clinton. A lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. And they say, like, well, you know, he's a smart guy. If he changed his diet, you know, maybe that's something I should look into. Right?
And you was also talking about a way that your wife, she makes infusion. Macrobiotic?
Well, I said fusion.
Sorry, fusion. That's what I meant to say.
Not infusion.
She infuses it with energy. No, but so there's a way to start feeding children, to start making, you know, making the brown rice more appetizing.
It's not even people have to eat brown rice, you know. It's just, you know, when we were in Europe, we started using some of the Japanese tradition is very strong in macrobiotics, and there's a lot of good things that we can learn from Asian cooking because they're a very healthy diet, right? But then, you know, you can fuse that with Spanish cooking, Italian cooking, different kinds of cooking, and come up with things that people go, oh wow, that doesn't look foreign at all. That looks like, that's delicious food.
And it is delicious. I mean, I've been eating macrobiotics for 20 years just because I like the taste. You go back to the old food, there's no taste in something that's not
You can tell it's toxic too. It actually hits your body, doesn't it? And it makes you tired.
I mean, growing up, there was nothing better than pizza and Coke. That was like a taste meme that would just... but then, you know, I just started to eat organic and healthy and feel better. You know, I know from personal experience, I mean, I had allergies up until the time I was like in college, and then someone said, well, maybe you're allergic to wheat. You know, I went to an allergy doctor. He gave me allergy shots against wheat. He never said stop eating bread.
Right.
Never, ever heard that. I said, wheat? Well, I think bread is made of wheat. What if I stop eating bread? I said that to no one told me. And my allergies actually cleared up.
Yeah.
Everything, you know, lines, everything, you know, sneezing all the time. I mean, you ask anyone, I always had a tissue in my hand because I was constantly sneezing. And then I stopped eating bread. It was a miracle.
Yeah.
And so simple, and nobody ever said that to me. Just stop eating bread. And that was like enlightenment. That was like a revelation, like from my own experience. So I said, you know, what if I stopped eating other things? Stop drinking Coca-Cola. And so I think people can learn. But, you know, you're out there and coaching people. It's so important that we do have the conversation, and people like Bill Clinton and others come forward to say, look, you can change your life just by changing your diet.
Yeah.
You must have witnessed people being, you know, their cancer being slowed down by this food. And
you know, this is really simple. This is not like there's not a it's not like miracle cures. We have to get over that way of thinking, right? When you treat your body well, your body knows what to do. If your body has not been abused so badly that it has literally forgotten how